Welcome to IT in Motion, where we make autonomous IT entertaining and informative. My name is Sun.
And I'm Josh. We're your hosts. Today we're talking to Dave Link, CEO of ScienceLogic. Everybody give it up for Dave.
The man, the myth, the legend.
How are you doing today, Dave?
Awesome. It's great to be with you both today.
Great to have you back. We thought for our icebreaker today, we're going to ask you some questions. Ask your preference, short answer. So we'll start with the first one. Chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream?
Chocolate all the way.
All the way. All right. Well, I guess that's the right answer because Dave said it.
I like the chocolate.
There you go.
If it's bean vanilla, I'm happy with that too. I haven't been eating a lot of ice cream lately, but either will do. They're both delicious. But
What
I
about
like
Napoleon if you had to choose?
That probably at age 7 or 8 would have been my choice, but
Yes.
I've gravitated to chocolate, then vanilla. Perhaps my favorite is chocolate chip.
Okay.
Interestingly, that's the vanilla with the chocolate chip.
In it, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right. All right. Second question, movies or video games?
Movies.
Okay. Any specific genre of movies that you gravitate towards?
Oh boy, it's gonna sound a little. Yeah, I've been really getting into series of movies from the BBC lately. It's been fun to watch BBC. We have a streaming service from the BBC that has caught my attention. I don't spend a lot of time with video games or movies or TV, but I like the BBC series right now. That's got my attention.
There you go.
All right. Next question. Green or purple?
Purple.
Purple.
Why? It's kind of my favorite color.
You know, it was my favorite color at age 8. There was it all gets back to cars for me. So there was a VW Bug that was painted purple in the town that I lived in. And when I was 5, I thought that was just the most amazing car on the universe. And I actually asked my father, could we repaint the Mercury that we had the color purple? Which he said, no, thank you, because I've got to drive that to work. But I love this car, and I love the color purple. So then I got a couple of Hot Wheels and Matchboxes that were purple, and I would play with those. But yeah, I like the color purple. Of course, we love green because green's everywhere outside, but purple's pretty unique.
Yeah. Green is good, but purple's better. I like that. All right. Ethernet or Wi-Fi?
Well, right now it's got to be Wi-Fi. It's just, it's just captivating what we've seen kind of come to the palm of our hand in our lifetime.
Yeah.
It is so amazing. It's almost breathtaking when I think about, when I grew up, we were still using rotary phones.
Right.
We see those in the movies now. If it's an old movie, I'm aging myself, but I never would have dreamed growing up, ever fathomed that we would have the power, the knowledge, the insight at our fingertips with the speeds and feeds that we have today. And now with Gen AI, large language models, it's really going to change how the world learns.
Mm-hmm.
Has access to insane amounts of information. Certainly, we've seen the internet be an explosive part of bringing the world together and democratizing information to make it available to the masses, which I think is very, very important and healthy for. We've seen civilizations in general over time. Among the civilizations that have thrived the most have created the most educated population. And the internet, and of course now Wi-Fi to your handheld or to any device, is doing more of the same. So to me, Wi-Fi is pretty dominant. I think of Ethernet maybe in an old school way where you are still hardwired to the network. That's maybe lacks a, today's networking genre of how that term should be the first thought that term should bring to your mind, but my thought is still in the cable Cat5 plug coming into a laptop or a server or a network switch or something like that. So Wi-Fi for me all the way.
Are you just saying that because one of our customers supports Jupiter 3 that just launched, which is super exciting? They provide Wi-Fi on in-flights and you name it.
Globally, anywhere on the globe, yes.
Shout outs to Hughes.
We love the guys at Hughes and the whole company. What a great company. What a great customer they've been. What a great partner they've been for many years. But no, I just think even some of the things with the low Earth orbit satellites as well as geospatial satellites from Hughes, the way that we're going to communicate anywhere on the globe has fundamentally changed. Yeah. This year will be kind of a rocket ship of change as these low Earth orbit satellites can connect to our cell phones anywhere. We will never be out of range.
Yeah.
And that is kind of astonishing thought. This is one of those thoughts even 5 years ago I didn't think was possible to the extent that we will see it over the next 12 to 24 months.
Yep. It's a good old trusty Ethernet is out.
It is out. Yes.
All right.
So in a similar vein, desktop or laptop?
Oh, I love the desktop. It just reminds me of my MS-DOS prompt from so many years ago. All those quick commands with MS-DOS, I still love them. But, I think, and of course all the Unix commands, one of the things that has changed the world is this viewpoint of mobility.
Yeah.
And to me, the laptop is today's equivalent to having everything at your fingertips. And it's really your productivity machine of our current work generation. That may change over time as the nature of the laptop continues to evolve. I've seen some very clever tablets recently that are seriously making me reconsider, do I need a laptop?
Exactly.
Especially ones that are incredibly great at rendering writing, and they're kind of like writing tablets, but it's really a laptop exposed as a new writing instrument. And the traditional laptop doesn't quite feel that way, but some of these new tablets that are very, very thin, very sleek, very elegant, like a few sheets of paper, I think that's the future of work productivity tools. And the way that we'll interact with them, the way that we'll write code, the way that we'll do our work will just be very different. That will be a conduit to, again, very, very fast Wi-Fi connections that connect us to all the back-end infrastructure we need to do our work.
Yeah, that's interesting because I know a lot of people that actually love like even the old school keyboards just because when you punch it down, there's something about the feeling.
The feeling,
right?
Yeah, it is interesting, right? If you go back and look at a lot of the pioneering mobile devices, right? Microsoft for a long time has put out the inking type devices. There was the Newton, there was the Palm.
Yes.
And all of them had this assumption that we've got this ability to hold a pen and write, but the technology is just now starting to catch up to where maybe that's a viable option.
I think it is, based on the ones that I've been viewing and testing, and some of the team members. Actually, the European team has been the most advanced field sales team at leveraging next-gen technologies to do their job. So I was over there in December and blown away with what they were doing with these new, very smart tablets. And that got me thinking, why am I carrying around all this, the density that I carry around in my bag, not just in my laptop, but also some of the papers I carry around with me. So it's just rethinking how we do our work, how we extemporaneously capture our thoughts real time, and how we draw and doodle and do the diagrams and the architectures that we want to do, and doing that in a way where you can manipulate it really efficiently. So the future of how we work and the devices that we'll use is changing before our very own eyes right now.
Constant evolution.
Absolutely. All right, we've got one more question for you, your preference. IT in Motion or any other podcast?
How can I? That's too easy. That's like the layup. IT in Motion for sure.
That's the correct answer.
Shucks. That is the correct answer.
Doing a great job.
Right.
Keeping it fun.
Amazing. Well, hey, what brought us here today is, this amazing company that you've started, that we have the privilege of working for, and kind of what you and others have put into that story and into this book. Can you tell us a little bit about this book? Who was participants of writing it and putting the idea together?
I am so excited, actually, to be here to talk about this book. The book, ScienceLogic Innovation, it really talks about our journey. And it is not a single author. It's a compilation of stories, of, I think, a compelling journey that we've taken from code day one. Why did we start the company? What was the problem space that we were looking at? What are we accomplishing for our customers, those business outcomes that actually make a difference in their lives? We felt that the story needed to be told and written down in a way that would familiarize not just our current customers, but new customers. There is a tremendous amount of innovation happening in our industry right now. We're at an inflection point, really a magical time with large language models and Gen AI, infusing a different way to look at these immense data store insights that we have with the infrastructure, IT infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, application infrastructure that we collect information from. And we felt at this moment in time, the story needed to be told from where the company started to where it's going. And that's really the focus of the book, is not just to talk about how we got here, but where we're going.
Awesome. So you mentioned there's several authors. Kind of how did the book come together?
There are a number of catalysts for the book. Our sales team was a significant catalyst, so I've given them all the credit in the world. They realized that we often do pattern matching in life, and in life we see things that are unfinished business. One of the things that we do know is people remember stories. This podcast is bringing to life stories. It's a lot easier to remember a story than read something or see something. It's the stories in life that we remember. Our brain stores that information in very efficient ways, and it's easier to recall. So the story of starting ScienceLogic, why we did it, how it got here, that is something that needs to be retold hundreds of times a month, thousands of times a month, actually, across the globe. And we realized that everybody had a slightly unique twist to that story. Mm-hmm. The story wasn't really written down in any one place. Mm-hmm. It was in a bunch of people's minds about how did this happen and what twist and turn took us down this path and another path. So we said, let's get together. Let's gather all that we can from lots of different parties. As we're aggregating, let's synthesize into a great story that tells the journey that we've had, so that it's a unifying mechanism for the field to tell, as they're extemporaneously talking about the company's journey, the founding, why it started, why you should care. They've got a central place, and they can give it to a customer, a prospective customer, a partner to read through to get that same viewpoint. One of the things we've realized is you do need a leave behind, because you want this to be a little bit more viral, and things get passed around. Things get on people's desks. Other people look, they want to read the intro. They want to understand what's the essence of ScienceLogic, how the company started, what it cares about, where it's going. That, to us, we needed to finally put it in one place. And so this was a catalyst to do that.
Yeah, it's amazing because you talk about collaboration. Many people were involved in putting this together, and I'm sure you folks were in the same room talking about these stories. That's kind of how it starts before you put it down on paper, right? Where there story, because you talked about everybody had their own perception on certain things. Did you learn from other people's perceptions on situations that you saw differently?
Well, I could quickly say no and sound try to sound contrite or bright, but I think the real answer is you're always learning. Yes, because we all come from a different background. We come from a different professional journey. We come from different understandings of traditions, not just from our home life, but from our work life. And although we might understand a story that we heard about a customer outcome in a certain viewpoint based on our tribal knowledge of how things work, sometimes, and we see this with customers, they take a totally different tact on why it was important for them, or why they want to use the technology to do something that we really wouldn't have ever dreamed of, but they're using it to a business outcome that actually was great for them. That collaboration, ultimately, as people come together, I'm not giving a specific example, but as people come together, I've always thought and believed that diversity of thought, more people, not too many, but enough people coming together against an idea gets you to your best work. Because that diversity of thought comes together, the diversity of perspectives comes together and strengthens architectures, strengthens code bases, strengthens understanding what the customer really wants, not just from one input, but from 4 or 5 across the customer. So as we gather insights from a broader array of people, we usually get better quality outputs.
Definitely. Especially with if they have like complementary skill sets to yours or
Yes.
vice versa. Because again, different backgrounds coming together, it's going to give you more of a universal view.
Correct.
Or opinion.
Yes.
Ways of thinking. Were there any variants of the story that were really wild, like you and Richard Chart fighting a grizzly bear or anything like that?
We did. There were plenty. With every company that you start, there's these defining moments where you're not sure if you'll get beyond that moment in time. Can you survive? Will the company survive? Can we make payroll? Will we get that next piece of business that enables us to continue on? There's a dozen times where Richard and I and Chris looked at each other, and probably me more than anyone, how are we going to make payroll? Like, we're not going to make it. What are we going to do?
And that's like one of the most important things to you.
Yeah, and then there was a grizzly bear that comes out of the closet, and it's about to eat all 3 of us.
And then you beat him up, and you got the money to make payroll. It was incredible.
Somehow, we beat that grizzly bear back and found a way to get a contract signed, or,
Amazing.
let my wife agree to take out yet a 5th credit card and put more debt on our family to pay bills that needed to be paid at that moment in time. But there are moments like that. We probably didn't characterize too many of those in the book, but they are flash points where you have indelible memories of specific moments in time that you just can't get out of your mind. You don't forget. You always remember kind of how you got over that hurdle, but you don't really dwell on it too much.
Yeah.
You just keep powering forward.
What's funny too is you don't see how other people see what the situation that you're going through. I was just talking to Eric Chambers the other day, and he was telling me about how he emailed you about his interest in joining the company back when he was a customer.
Yes.
And at that time, you were actually going through this. You're like, well, I think we're kind of going through troubles with the business. So check back in about a year from now, which he did.
That was so true. That's a really great example. We've had over the years.
But that's a representation of the culture that you've built. He was interested in joining. He had no idea of what was happening behind closed doors, but he knew that he wanted to gravitate towards
Be part of it, yeah.
what you folks are building.
I'll tell you, in the early days of a startup, You are really scrappy and trying to figure out how to satisfy the customer's needs, but almost act bigger as a company presence than you really are, so that the customer has confidence in their path forward with you. So you're never really exposing all of your financials in the early days to those customers, because if they knew it, they'd be
Out the
scared
door.
to death. They wouldn't transact. They would just say, sayonara. Again, this was a bootstrapped startup where we didn't have a lot of funding. In the early days, for the first 7 years, we bootstrapped the company. So we used our own money and then really just got going. Had another partner that I knew, a friend of the family, that helped, but was very instrumental with me in the early days of privately funding the company. But that first 7 years of bootstrapping was really dicey. And I just going back to the Eric Chambers story, there's so many ScienceLogic team members that have come from customers, where the customers really believed in the vision,
Yeah.
in the mission, in what we were doing, saw the brilliance in kind of the synthesis of our data sets and how it delivers better outcomes than other options that they could consider or what they were using before they switched to our product. And we have to be very careful how we interact with customers that want to become employees. So we're always forthright and did it eyes wide open with the customer's management at the right time. But in the case of Eric Chambers, we were literally out of money. I didn't have the money to hire Eric. I would have loved to have hired Eric when he was first interested, but I had to kind of put that on pause in a delicate way, not to alarm him about our financial condition,
right,
but to say now's not the right time, but let's stay in touch. And fortunately, he did, and he's been here, 18 years or something, 17 years. It's been
quite a while.
A glorious union, and he's been such a tremendous performer for our company and for our customers, and training thousands of people all over the globe. What a great team member he's been, and now a great leader within the company. So happy he's been on this journey with us.
Yes, of course.
Absolutely. One question I had for you is, you've taken these stories, put them to paper. What did you learn about innovation through that process?
Actually, writing a book is not easy. It's hard. And as I was writing the introductory section of the book and really thinking about what would be important and compelling to suck people into the story, to get them to care, to want to read the rest of the book, how would I characterize those early days and do it in a way that was interesting enough for the reader to want to learn more beyond just that early phase of the company's formation. And we really had to iterate through a lot of authorship across the organization, the sales team, the SE team, Rich Kaczarski. Many people across the business were helpful and instrumental in pulling this together. The most notable thing is we really had product, engineering, sales, some of the original team members that are part of the customer care and expert services organization come together to feed sections of the book that portrayed different parts of the journey that a customer will experience with us. And in doing so, I think it gave a broad flavor for many cast of kind of important characters that are foundational to the life cycle of a customer's journey as you're transforming IT ops. That was really the story we wanted to tell. It is not a install it and set it and forget it storyline. It is a methodical approach to doing it the right way.
Yes.
And what are our best practice recommendations? What are our best practice learnings over the last 20 years that we can tell as a story to customers as they're taking this journey with us?
So speaking of that, because it talks about obviously the beginnings of this company, why did you folks create the company in the first place? I mean, if you even have the problem statement in your mind, feel free to share that.
Well, again, we've talked about this in an earlier podcast, so please go back and refer to that one. I might be more articulate in an earlier podcast, but the original light bulb moment came from having worked in a very large internet infrastructure company where we were managing infrastructure all over the globe using about 15 different tools to do it and delivering mediocre service quality. Specifically, when we got a call, the operators really never quite knew what the problem was themselves. So they got caught flat-footed on so many occasions, and we realized that the mechanism that we were using to give them line of sight to where the problem was, inferior, inadequate, ultimately delivered horrible customer experience, customer outcomes. So, timeout, we're going to churn off all those hosting and application customers because we will not be exceeding their expectations as a service provider. And that light bulb was like, the industry is broken. This industry is built in a mindset where the network team has one tool, the database team has another tool, the security team has a tool, the virtualization team has a tool, the load balancing team has a tool, often the tool that comes from the manufacturer of those technologies, but we wanted to bring all those data sets together to see them as one service. All the things that come together in that service view. And that was really not common at that time. Certainly BMC had done a lot in the world of ITIL and business service management, but they weren't dynamic. Once you set them, if there were any changes, you had a lot of manual work to get it back to be viable. And we wanted to make that an automated outcome from a business impact perspective. And so that was the viewpoint, just code day one. We knew that was a better way to solve the problem. It wasn't being solved by the industry. We believed if we could thread the needle and create a product that got over that very, very ambitious hump of instrumenting thousands of things and coming to an efficient way of discovering them, and then automatically understanding how we wanted to look at fault configuration and performance data, and how that then related to an aggregate complex service, and then service impact so that it could be proactive. That's the unicorn. That's the, if we can get there, we've solved the really tricky problems in IT. We're now working on things well beyond that with kind of the magic of large language models and what that will do to transform this data set that we have even further. But I'd say the original viewpoint was the industry's broken. It's silo tools. We're going to bring them together in one common data model, smartly and intelligently reason across it so that we can get to basically a recommendations engine on where the problem is and what to do to be proactive about IT rather than reactive.
Sure, early customers were they were a part of that vision too, helping you on the ground solving problems.
Yes. I would say with any product company, you have to give a hats off to the customer.
Mm-hmm.
The customer is a pathway to rapid innovation. And I say that because in the early days, we charted out about 220 unique features in the product that we thought would really differentiate our product beyond the table stakes feature function set. When we first launched the product, I think we had knocked off about 180 of those. But I'd say very quickly, our early customers gave us line of sight to another 50 ideas that were spectacular, that were really good. And those ideas were often nested in the challenges they had with other products. And if we could solve that challenge, they would move.
Mm-hmm.
So we would very principally focus on solving those problems so that it was eminently obvious why our product was better. And I like to say that we just tried to do things the opposite of the industry. And that opposite approach really helps define kind of a narrative of gray versus white, a very different color contrast, or purple versus, green. That color contrast where there's a clear difference between the two. And that's what we were going for at the point where we were really innovating rapidly in the early days of the company's product life cycle.
Right. I think it is interesting. One of the things I've observed in the culture of ScienceLogic compared to a lot of other companies is we are really open to working with other technologies, other companies, integrating with competitors. So many companies are so focused on their proprietary technology and blocking out the competition that they lose sight of what that's doing to the customer, right? And so the customer ends up with a worse outcome because they're not willing to operate. But the most successful companies find ways to do that, right? They find ways to operate with others and kind of build that whole overall platform.
That's a really good point, Josh. And it's an interesting observation. I don't think I've ever characterized that in publicly before, but that was, and it may not even be in the book as you've described it. I think it might be in my intro a little bit, but we had an open architecture mindset from the very beginning. Because what we believed was having vendor lock-in, bad. Nobody likes it.
Things always change too.
It isn't good for the customer.
Yeah.
Things change too often. So we're going to start out, again, code day one, where we're going to bring any technology, any partner, try to interact with that technology in an intelligent way rather than stiff arm and not allow for an integration or an interaction. I would liken this to the early days of Satya at Microsoft.
Nadella, yeah.
Yeah, I think he really changed that company culture from it's Microsoft or nothing to the early days of we're going to embrace Linux and we're going to make it great and better. And we're going to make it part of the ecosystem and we're going to make it part of Azure. And they're still, of course, great with their core operating system products.
They have a stronghold.
They do.
Yeah.
And that's, of course,
any company wants that. That's market share.
you have to do that. But he really created an open mindset and changed the culture of the company in an important way. And that actually, I think that went a long way to changing the customer mindset.
Yeah.
Who are we working with here? We're now working with somebody that will be open, that I'm not going to get vendor lock-in, that I'm not going to get a proprietary thing where I get locked into a price point or a technology set that is hard to move away from. So customers like best in class, they like choice, they like rapid innovation.
They don't like when people say no.
They don't love the no's, but they do like the ability to control their own destiny.
Right.
And I think that's what we always wanted to give customers, the ability within our product to control their destiny, to instrument a new technology rather than have to wait for the vendor. So we built a capability in our product where you could instrument any technology, IoT technology, network technology, server, cloud, and it's all within our product. An SDK now that Josh has worked on to build one of the slickest RESTful API instrumentation builders that we've ever created. It is awesome and incredibly versatile, but it comes back to the heart of starting the company.
That's right.
Let's be open. If we need an integration to a new technology, we can build it, but the customer can build it immediately with our product. Full stop.
There's no bottleneck there.
No, it's kind of the best of both worlds. It's an open source-esque mindset supported by a great set of engineers that make sure if something isn't working, it gets fixed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, eventually we'll be supported. I'm not sure if it's supported yet, right?
Oh, there's definitely parts of it that are supported and released, and there's more coming, right? It's the whole idea is, like Dave's saying, we want to empower our customers to not have to be experts in everything, but to be able to solve their business problems. So, that's core to what the company is.
Yes.
That's right. That's right. So
Well said.
from your opinion, Dave, how does this company contribute to larger society?
Yeah, if we look at what's happening in technology, technology is raising the economic opportunity for everyone across the globe. As we spoke about earlier, just the rise of low Earth orbit satellites, which will bring internet to any place on the globe, everybody, and likely reasonably affordably in the not too distant future, that changes everything. That makes it such that people that don't have the benefit of schools or education or scientific resources or other things to now have an ability to leapfrog from an educational perspective, to leapfrog something that would seemingly be unimaginable to them. So as we keep systems up and running with our product, that's our core mission, as we keep systems that are spread across the globe for telecommunications companies, for governments, for large enterprises across all industries, my earnest belief is that is helping mankind deliver goods and products,
Yeah.
deliver education online. We are managing
First responders too.
Yeah, we're managing so many critical infrastructure
Yeah.
systems all over the globe, in cities around the globe, in governments around the globe, in carriers across the globe. Critical infrastructure, that subway systems, water systems. I mean, when I start to think about the kinds of systems that we're making sure work so that our daily lives go reasonably without
Hiccups of sorts.
without the hiccups that grind away at us. Like, boy, that was a lousy day. Why did
Unnecessarily, run into.
why did electricity not work for the last 5 hours?
We literally keep the lights on, is what you're saying.
With a lot of the critical infrastructure around the globe,
That's right.
we're connected to it. So yes, that is our give back to make the world a better place.
And I really think that's one of the things I love about ScienceLogic, right? I kind of like being in the plumbing, right? Like sitting behind the scenes, working on things that maybe aren't immediately apparent to the end user, right? The average consumer doesn't necessarily know ScienceLogic, but they know a dozen or 24 different companies that we work with that work because they work with us.
Right.
And I think that's a really cool place to be.
Well, that is the mission and vision that we have been on for a long time, and it inspires me to have team members like yourself on this journey with us to, we may not be in the front pages, but we know the really good foundational work we're doing to help critical infrastructure all over the globe work seamlessly and without fail, so that trains run on time, so that the planes run on time, so that the things that create a better life for us each and every day just work.
Yeah,
That's right.
The donuts get to the shop on time, right? That's
Yes.
an important part of it.
Silent heroes.
Well said.
So one kind of thing you brought up a little bit earlier was talking about building an IT practice and building it with monitoring and AI ops, right? Like there's this need to harmonize. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I could. Let me go back to when you started with the company, Josh.
Yeah.
This need to harmonize. You were working often with customers.
Oh, yeah.
Often directly at the bequest of a customer request, a custom engagement request, a custom requirement request, and learning about what they needed, and then thinking about a clever way to solve the problem. So when I look at how we have evolved to, I may not be answering the message square on as you're thinking about it, but I'm taking a different angle. What I've seen from an innovation perspective We've talked about the customers being an incredible engine for innovation, but it's really our team interpreting and collaborating, and often having to steer the customer to a common mechanism where whatever the customization is, we can have very, very significant reuse opportunity if we steer it in a direction where it has broad applicability versus narrow applicability. And I think that's one of the tricks of great product companies, is thinking through all the innovation opportunities and the custom requests to do the next new thing. But how do you do it in a way that's broadly innovative? And now the leapfrog is, how do we do it in a user experience that's wildly intuitive, which is kind of this next phase of the journey that we're on right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think if I were to sort of put that into a phrase I've used a lot, it's the idea that you shouldn't change your company for the technology, you should change your technology for the company, right? For your business needs. But you need to have that two-way conversation, because sometimes, a small change may turn the technological problem from an impossible one to an easy one.
Right.
And so as long as you've got that two-way street, that innovation flows back and forth, and you can harmonize your business operations with your IT operations, you end up with a much, much better outcome.
Yes, and you kind of fight between the Steve Jobs approach, where I don't want to hear what the customer wants. I'm going to help them decide that they need this. So I admire that type of the spirit of that innovation, where you're coming up clean slate. I'm going to build something that's so compelling, everybody will want it.
Mm-hmm.
There is a product angle that should follow that set of parameters to some degree. However, what we've seen in mature products is you really then have to start what you've just described, the iterative approach of working with customers to get to the enhancements and innovation leapfrogs that are important, but that we know are going to really hit the nail on the head, where we're not going to build something that will be interesting, but nobody uses it.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right. Dave, this has been such an insightful conversation. I'm sure many of our listeners have been thoroughly engaged throughout all of your responses. Going back to the book a little bit, first of all, where can our listeners purchase the book if they're interested in this? And also, is there specific chapters that are some of your favorites that people should tune into a little more than others?
The book is going to be available. When we think about the audience for our podcast, it's a lot of our customers and partners and prospects. Contact your sales team. Contact the customer care team. Contact the CSM team, the customer success management team. They will get you a copy of the book. So we want to make sure that this book is broadly available. I believe it will be on Amazon and a number of other commerce venues, but I want to make sure that we get this book in the hands of people that want to learn more about the company and our journey. If I look at the chapters, of course, I love the introduction because that is the story, but think of where we start. We start with an introduction of why do we start the company? How do we start the company? Why should you care? But then we quickly go into the second chapter, which is a customer story, a set of customer stories. Because we've always believed, to Josh's earlier point with an open architecture, it's about the customer.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the very second chapter was customer stories.
Love it.
What are customers doing and how are they succeeding? Not pontificating more about the company or more about tech spec, but what outcomes actually are being achieved. And to me, that might be my favorite part of the story. We all love talking to customers and working with them to solve difficult problems in a very effective manner so that the business outcome is tremendous, so that everybody around the table feels like a winner. The other thing we talk about best practices in using and configuring the product and how to change operational processes, which often is part and parcel. But the thing that often is lost in our industry is this is a never-ending, iteratively improving way of life.
Yep.
So operational excellence, you never stop improving. And I think the thesis of our book is you just have to keep putting those next 10 best ideas, 10 best initiatives on the plate with the team, grind through. Continual improvement models is what the best operations teams live for. I like to say, we learned this early on in the company. Many companies are built with products that articulate a whole bunch of errors, alerts, problems that then have to be diagnosed. Workflow has to be created for those incidents to resolve them.
Yep.
And a lot of times people focus on the alerts rather than, at times, some of those alerts end up being false positives, where it was an alert, but it was an alert that really didn't matter that much.
It's just noise.
Right. And the signal to noise ratio is so important. So one of the things that we've done over and over again with our customers is work on getting rid of the false positives. If you get rid of the false positives, we've done this with customer after customer, then you probably could eliminate potentially 30%, 40% of the incidents that you've got to chase after. Just think of the productivity gains, just relentlessly, iteratively getting rid of false positives. And we've done this with customers over and over again to the customer's delight, because ultimately when team members get an alert in the middle of the night, you want it to be actionable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want it to matter.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not getting up for nothing. And if you get up too many times for nothing, you don't get up that next time. And of course, it's that time when you really needed to take the alarm. So
That's right.
that being said, there's a lot of ways that we have talked about a better tomorrow on the journey to iteratively, continuously improving. And that's why it's worth reading the book.
Amazing. Well, it's been such a pleasure having this conversation with you, Dave. I know that everyone will enjoy this. And you heard it here first, folks. Please get your copy of Innovation through your local ScienceLogic representative, or maybe on Amazon very soon. Any other last questions or comments and pieces of advice that you have for some of our listeners to take away from this episode, Dave?
The best piece of advice is start every day fresh. Make the best of it, no matter how bad yesterday was. It could have been the worst day of your life. Try to make today the best day of your life. Do all you can. That goes from an athlete on the tennis court. If you just hit a terrible shot, make the next shot the best shot you ever hit in your life, or a golfer. So there's plenty of sports analogies for that same statement. I try to do that myself. 2023 was a tough year. There were lots of ups and downs. The balls don't always bounce your way. Resilience, specifically resilience in mindset, to reset every morning and make the best of that day. That is the advice that I try to live my life by, and it has served me well. I would recommend that to anybody. Just get your mindset when you get up that I'm going to make this the best day I can. And don't forget what happened. Don't forget what may not have gone the right way the day before, or the week before, or the month before. But don't dwell on it, and make today the best day you can.
Love that. All right. Well, you heard it. Every day, start fresh. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Great to be
Josh.
here. Okay.
Appreciate
Thank you, guys.
Coming in.
All right. And folks listening, appreciate you as always. We will see you soon. Sayonara.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. We're available on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Stitcher, and many other podcast platforms. We release podcasts on a regular basis. If you'd like to learn more, go to sciencelogic.com/podcast.